next step we're going to do is mess with the hats. The hats contain some of the more critical elements. So I'm going to turn on 16ths, and I'm basically going to set every other step of the way. And I'll show you some techniques to spruce this up a bit. So now that we've copied it all the way to 2, I'm going to highlight all of these and hit Command D to duplicate. You can do this with Control D, it's the same thing. Next, for the 1/3, I'm basically going to set this to 32s, zoom in a little bit more, and switch it to triplet grid. Take off, I'm going to set it to 16ths for now, just because you'll see. Now, if it sounds off, what you can do is you can highlight all of the hi-hats and just use your arrow keys to fix them. Okay, so now that we have our hats, I'm just going to readjust them, so that way you have a little bit more of a pattern going with your hats. So that's at 2, I'm gonna set it at 3 for me. Make sure it's on 30 seconds, do that. Draw a few notes here and there. It's okay if it sounds off time, that's what you want. So for our cymbal and the rest of our hats, it's easy to make a pattern, but if you want your whole set to sound real nice, we'll get to that in a minute. So I'm basically going to add snares and claps on the 1/3. So every other kick, you want to have a clap and a snare. So I'm basically going to add a clap and a snare on this second, and for our last one I'm going to do that as well. It sounds off time because you want everything to sound off time, so that way you make room for the bass. Next, for our finalization, you want to add a compressor. You want to add a reverb, and you also want to add a saturator and a auto filter. So saturator, and I'm going to put the auto filter before the compressor. I'm going to right click my auto filter, my saturator, I don't know what I'm thinking, and set it to high quality. And for our, I swore you could have done it for the compressor, maybe that was an earlier version, but I'm going to let the loop play and I'm going to adjust certain parameters. I'm gonna make sure the kicks only hit like a certain range, like 43 should be fine. The compressor, I'm gonna turn on forward feedback 1. It gives it a little bit more punch without a lot of distortion. And there you guys have it, your very own special dubstep drums. If you want to create your claps to have more echo, I would suggest creating a return train inside of the drum rack. And you want to send and do the ins and outs. You want to set it to a return track that has the reverb, so that way it doesn't, you can send multiple things to that instrument, to that effect, but you won't have to load up like 10,000 effects. It's pretty nice. So I'm basically going to set my clap and snare to be hit with more impact. But those are the basics for dubstep drums. In the next tutorial, we will talk about bass and how to resample your bass for the drum parts. So I'll check you guys out in the next video for another tutorial set. So stick with me here in a few minutes and I'll basically show you how to create something new. I hope you enjoyed the 3-part drum series, and maybe 3 parts, I'm not sure, but I wanted to make sure that you guys understood some of the basics. When you load some of your drum cells, like your kicks, you want to make sure that they don't interfere with each other. To make sure that they don't interfere is that when you play like 2 notes at the same time, like those two, let's see, I probably can't do an example because my keyboard is kind of messed up. Yeah, let's see. They sound nice together. They sound very fresh and very harsh, but they don't interfere with the same signal. That's what you want to prevent with drums. That's why I have so many different frequencies. We're basically removing harmonics from the lower end so that way they don't interfere and sound kind of muffled and distorted. That's the best way to describe it. And it will really interfere with your mix if you add a sub bass. So for this demo example, I'm going to show you that like pretty quickly. I'm just gonna create a new cell and do C2 and set this bass probably about 30 Hertz. And now if you listen, they still sound nice and crispy, and you can still hear the sub bass because of the filters that are removing the lower frequencies, as you can see with this clap. So as far as dubstep drums go, you want things to sound off time, but to keep your clap and your kick consistent, so that way when you start creating bass, that your kicks and your snares don't overlayer some of the bass. So I'll check you guys out here in another next few minutes, and hope you guys enjoy.